say like Lake Norman and
Yeah.
like Plaza Midwood.
Yeah.
We say across like Inland Sea Marina, because then
Yeah.
they can look that up too.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah,
Just so they don't get the exact address, but
yeah. And I think
can
that's a
easily
lot of
find it.
people are going to get value out of this. And I think the biggest thing is hearing the unedited versions of what you guys have went through.
Yeah.
There's the glamorous side, and then there's the real side.
You just see like the highlight reel on Instagram usually or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that's like maybe 5% of it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
right. It's like all these little things that happen. But I'm sure when you guys were getting into it, you probably talked to a lot of people that were already doing. Like, how did you guys even come up with the idea to do the Airbnbs? Like,
So that was kind of me. Like I had to convince
Brand.
her
Yes.
Yeah.
to be like, yo, we should try this out. Because in 2020, I was still in Chicago.
Yep.
And we had the MLS was like locked down because of COVID. Like a lot of the leagues and I guess working world was. So me and my roommate, who is also like dabbling into Airbnb now as well.
Yep.
His dad was, I think he was like head of like maybe like comprehension in Indiana, or I think he might be with Dean now, but at Indiana University. And his dad would like send him books, and he sent my roommate's name was Jerry. He sent us these real
Shout out
estate
Jerry.
books. Yeah, shout out to Jerry, Jerry Guchar. He sent us these real estate books, and I was like, oh, like what's
So
that?
many.
And he had like four or five.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, like I'm starting to think about getting into real estate. Like you should check it out. I was like, okay. I mean, I had nothing but time. Like, we couldn't train. We couldn't even go outside. Like Chicago was shut down. So I just like started diving into real estate, and now like how to invest in real estate was like literally one of the books.
Yeah.
And then long distance investor, and then one of them was like an Airbnb book, and like the Airbnb book interested me the most.
Why is that? Why did that that?
I
was the
think
one
purely just because of like cash flow.
Yeah.
I guess like the opportunity to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's not as guaranteed as long-term rentals. But I think like Caleb knows, if you can make your Airbnb aesthetically pleasing, you're likely to get more bookings. And I'm a competitor.
Yeah.
So I want to compete. I want to be better than my opposition. So I was like, man, like, I don't want to do Airbnb in Chicago, but if an opportunity did present itself, like I wanted to be prepared for that.
Why didn't you want to do it in Chicago? Like, what
There
about
was
it?
a lot of restrictions.
Okay.
I didn't really see myself there in the
Long-term.
future. Yeah, like long term. It's a nice city to visit. Obviously some of my Chicago friends would argue like they love living there. I don't like the cold.
Yeah.
So I
But
was
you're
like,
from down here.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing.
4 months out of the year, it's great.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The
exactly.
rest are terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And Rebecca's from Louisiana, so she absolutely hates the cold. So we kind of like, we're not gonna like live long term in Chicago. We'll just
Yeah.
like see the contract out and see what happens after that.
At that point, did you have any idea you were going to go to Charlotte FC?
I had no clue.
They didn't have anything with the team or anything going on. I didn't know if they
The team was announced,
Yeah.
but it was like because of COVID, it was like, oh, it might start next year, it might not. So it was like kind of a long shot, especially for the position I was in. Like I wasn't like a renowned player. I only had I think 3 years in the league at the time, going into my fourth year, but it was an abbreviated year. So I had no clue about coming to Charlotte. I just wanted to learn about real estate. And that year went how it did. Was not great for me or a lot of people, I would imagine, because of COVID. And we had a completely new coaching staff come in, completely new front office, and they wanted to go into a different direction than BB13. So, I was like,
of sports,
okay,
right?
well,
The mayor role was filled. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I don't know. Maybe they're still trying to figure it out, by the way.
Yeah.
I think they finished last in the East this year. So, but
Sorry, you made a good decision.
Yeah, well, wasn't really my decision,
That's all right.
but
You can call it your decision.
it was a good decision for me
Yeah.
that they made. And then so after that happened, I called my agent and I was like, hey, I don't know if this is possible, but I want to go to Charlotte. And he was like, okay, like they're probably not going to start till 2022. We'll see if they have any interest because they had to start building a roster.
Yeah.
And they needed players from the league because there's so many roles that international players can take up. You need American players. There's like certain, I guess, salary. I don't know what the word
Is there a
is
salary
for it.
cap for it? For
There is a
your
salary
team?
cap,
Okay.
yeah. but there's like, these 10 players can make this amount, these 10 players can make this.
Oh, so it's like
These four
diversified or
pla-
sectioned off.
So,
Based on
yeah,
that. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
is that based on
there's
like
tiers?
what?
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
There's
Tiers
okay.
that they have to fill. So I was like, I mean, I think it's a good opportunity for them. It's a really good opportunity for me. So
Hometown kid going back to the hometown
I was like,
city.
I went to UNC Charlotte to play soccer.
Yep.
Like I grew up in North Carolina, so I was like, this seems great. If it works.
And where were you guys at? Were you in Louisiana?
I was still in Louisiana
UNCC?
finishing up my graduate program there.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this was 2020. So I graduated at the end of December of 2020. So it's kind of like, okay, if Chicago doesn't pick up Brandt, where are we going? Like, it was everyone was after, like, what are you doing after graduation? Like, are you going to stay here? Are you going to get a job? I'm like, I don't even know where we're going to be living. Like, I don't know what city. I don't know what state. Like, I have no idea. So I was still just coming and going, visiting in 2020. But I was able to be up there for a few months just because of COVID, since all my stuff went to virtual, so I could do everything online. But yeah, I was technically still in Louisiana.
What was your graduate program in?
Mental health counseling.
Are you still in that right now?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yes, I am not doing mental health, or I'm not actively doing mental health counseling.
Gotcha.
So everything's like still up to date, like all my license, all that.
Just in case.
In case I want to go into it again, depending on where we kind of take the Airbnb and how much we want to go like hands off. But as of right now, it is fully 100% Airbnb.
Gotcha. Okay. That's really cool.
So she was still in Louisiana. Chicago tells me on November 11th that, hey, we're not going to pick you up, but we're not going to say anything until the deadline because we're going to try and trade you.
When was the deadline?
December 1st.
Okay.
So
About
I
3
called my
weeks.
agent like literally after that meeting, and I was like, this is what's going to happen. This is what they're trying to do, but I want to go to Charlotte. So let's see if we can make that happen. Next week, we had our joint bachelor parties because we're getting married in December.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going
There's
on.
a
lot.
lot of moving
Yeah.
pieces and a lot of uncertainty. And my agent calls me like literally on the bachelor party and is like, hey, I just called Charlotte. Like there's some interest there. And I was like, oh, sick. Like that would be great. Another like week and a half goes by. I think 4 or 5 days. Our wedding was December 18th of 2020.
Yep.
I got word. They sent the contracts over. We negotiated for probably like 2 or 3 days. And I signed it on the 15th, and then they announced that we got married on December 18th. So
Sweet.
or announced that I signed on December 18th, and we got married on December 18th.
That's cool.
So it was just like, euphoric, and we're like,
Perfect
okay,
storm.
now we have some certainty. Let's go to Charlotte and let's go try to find a house and see if we can do the Airbnb or the house hacking thing. Which Rebecca was not on board with the house hacking.
So
That
why?
was
As you know.
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah,
I remember the
Yeah.
conversation. I FaceTimed you.
Yeah,
It was
I
our
remember
first
because I
conversation.
remember like I hit up Cole Schweidering and I was like, "Yo, do you know any realtors in Charlotte? Like, I don't really have any connections to like the real estate world there." And he was like, "Yeah, I got a great guy for you, Paul. Like, just give him a call." So literally called
Better
Paul.
call Paul.
Yeah, we got better call Paul. So did that, and then I was like, "Yeah, we might think about doing like the Airbnb thing. We don't really know. We're not really sure."
So when we had the first conversation on FaceTime, did you already have this conversation with Rebecca about house hacking? Or?
I did not.
Okay, so when we were talking,
Yeah.
she's learning about all this.
Yeah, this
Gotcha.
was my ideas, and I was like, maybe I can probably convince her,
No.
So, yeah,
You gotta believe.
Rebecca was not on the board with like the complete house hacking.
Yeah.
And as well as anybody, I think we looked at like 60 houses together.
It was a good amount.
It was-
Yeah,
yeah.
because it was trying to find the right one that fit for what you
Yeah.
guys are looking for. Because like I think that's the thing is when people get a house hack, they don't realize like you got to find a good situation that makes sense. Not every situation makes sense.
And there's not a lot layout wise that do make sense.
Yeah,
Right.
Especially if you're trying to be separate. Right?
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're
Yeah.
renting a bedroom, okay, you can do
Right.
that in a lot of different. But I know we were looking for something very specific.
Yeah, and especially in Charlotte, like there's not a
Yeah.
whole lot of those opportunities out there. On top of how competitive the real estate market already was, with everybody just throwing like $50,000 and $60,000 over asking price. You had no idea what's going to happen if you're going to get it. So I spoke to her and she's like, we are not doing the house hacking where like we rent out bedrooms and we live in one. Like we are married, I was like, okay, well,
Like you could have done that in Chicago with your roommates.
So you're thinking like this
before-
is like a dorm room kind of type thing. That's kind of what's vision going through your head.
Yes.
Like this
because-
guy wants to live in a dorm room with his soccer players.
Exactly, because in Chicago, when he was looking, he kind of started telling me that he was into it. Going on Zillow, Chicago is great for triplexes and duplexes. There's so many, and the way they would section it, it made sense to do kind of house hacking, either bedrooms or like individually, like separate. So it was kind of like, okay, in Chicago, I can see how that can make sense and it can work. And I'm like, and you were like, we weren't married yet. We weren't technically living together. I would just come and visit here and there when I could. And it was like, okay, now we're going to be married. I'm like, I'm not walking down the stairs and some random person just sitting on the couch because they also shared this living room. I'm like, no. I was like, it has to be completely separate, either like away from the house or another room that's 100% separate.
Yeah.
And then that's when, so I shut that down. And then the conversation about, well, what about a roommate? And I was like, okay, we could do one roommate and I have to know this roommate.
Yeah.
So I gave a little bit on that.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the full house hacking, but
Yeah, the stars, like, eventually, after 4 months of looking, started to align. And it was crazy how we found this one because it had been on the market for a little bit. And I think I was at an away game.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't even there to look at the home. It was just Rebecca, and I hit you up, and I was like, yo, can you go look at this? Like, Rebecca's in town. And I FaceTimed in for the showing. And Rebecca was like, yeah, it looks good. You were like, yeah, it looks good. It was like they allow short-term rentals, in the area. And it's like you could make this bottom room into something. And I was like, okay, can you section it off? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, I think it was because I think I was in Tampa at the time. And I flew straight from Tampa to my buddy's wedding because we had an off day that was in Wilmington. And Rebecca and I got lunch in Wilmington that day. And we're like, dang, like, should we do it? Like, what do you think? Because I'd never purchased a home before. And we were just eventually just like, screw it, like, chugged our beers. We're like, let's send Paul the offer. Like, let's see, like, yeah, let's go through with it. I think, like, we put, like, what, like, maybe 10 or 15K under asking.
Yeah.
And then they came back with, like, 5 under asking, and we're like, whatever, like, $5,000 on the loan is
well, I
not
remember
that.
you were like, do you really want to lose this house over
Yeah.
$5,000? We're like,
Additional
Okay.
$5.
Well, my point to it
mortgage.
is we found a very unique property that fit your needs. It'd be different if there was like multiple options.
Right.
But like this was good price in an upcoming area in Villa Heights, right? I
Yes.
think that was the key.
Great location,
And
great
so-
rate.
Yeah, and the thing I was thinking about is like, how you're thinking about like places to live, especially with your wife, significant other. It's like there's safety that comes into it too. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of, we could have found some other areas. We've looked at some recently.
Yeah.
We looked at some.
That it's like,
Yeah, maybe not.
maybe not this.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, so it was kind of the perfect storm of stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, like one of my best friends was moving to. She got a new job in Charlotte from Raleigh, and I was like, "Hey, we just bought a home. We have another bedroom with an in-suite bathroom, and I lived with them in college. Like Rebecca knows them super well.
yes.
And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So it was like, we kind of got best of both worlds because we
Yeah.
Airbnb the bottom now, and then my buddy still lives in the room, and we're just like one big happy real estate family.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you made the best out of it, is what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yep.
I did as much research as I could, but I feel like you can't truly learn something until you
you're in
actually
it.
do it and go through it.
Yep.
So as prepared as we were, and actually it did a lot better than I thought it was going to do. I
Yeah,
was
that
like,
first month. Talk about that first month. So you guys closed on the house, and I remember you texted me.
yeah,
Pretty shortly after we had closed. I think after you guys got it set up, right? Because you got the Murphy bed.
yeah,
I think that's something key people need. Like, you guys made this room work really well of the way you designed it.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the amount of measurements I had to take of that
Oh my
room
gosh, yes.
and try to line it up. I'm on Wayfair and IKEA, Crate and Barrel. I'm like, okay, do you think this would fit? And I've never installed. I was not handy at all with housing items.
It's like,
She's
Tell me
attesting
that.
to it over there.
So that's another thing. I really had to learn, and now it's not second nature, but I have a lot more experience with it, and Rebecca does as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that first month was 90% occupied. Granted, we probably priced it a little lower just because we weren't really
sure.
sure. It was the recommended Airbnb price, which I'm sure as they tend to put a little lower so they
Yeah.
can get their calendars booked. And I was like, yo, Paul, this thing's pretty dope.
so, Rebecca, loop me in kind of what you were doing as you're going through this process. Touring homes, kind of futures up in the air a little bit. From your perspective, what was life like?
It was interesting because when we first, I guess, moved to Charlotte, the first month, we were pretty much living in the living room of one of our best friends. So they had a 1 bed, 1 bath, apartment.
Yeah, just off of like South Church Street over here.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, we're gonna go up to Charlotte in January. We're gonna find a house probably in like a week. I think we said we were gonna be with them for like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks max. And house after house after house, we would like go back or like sitting on the couch, and they're like, anything? We're like, no, not yet, not yet. And then like 1 week turned into 2 weeks, and then you could see they're kind of like, all right, our apartment's like small. I mean, obviously like we're great friends with them and stuff, but tight quarters for 4 people. So I think we took maybe like a week off, went to go visit family, and then we came back. And then I remember having the conversation. This was down the line because this is technically when we put, it was like the last weekend. I remember we moved into Uptown 550, living in the smallest studio ever. And then everything for my counseling just got approved. So I finally like got my license, I could do everything.
Nice.
And so I'm in this little teeny weeny studio sitting on like a couch with like cardboard boxes as my desk, trying to do sessions. And then Brandt's coming from practice, and I'm like, okay, well, this has to be confidential. You can't be in here. So he would actually go in the closet and lay in the closet and just watch Netflix. Put his headphones in, because I couldn't go down to the conference rooms in the apartments either, because that just wasn't really secure. And then the office, I was only allowed to go in the office on Mondays. Like that was my scheduled day. So every other day I'm like, so we're kind of just in between like me doing my sessions, him doing training, and then we're like going to houses. And then I think it was like a couple of weeks before we put the offer in, we were at one house we were, I guess, on the deck. I remember having the conversation. Paul's like, look, guys, so like,
I remember this conversation.
I think this was like, 55, 52 or something house that we've seen. Like, we kind of got to see, like, where are we, like, where are we taking this? And we're like, I don't know, this is not looking good. So I think we were like, okay, let's give it one more weekend. And then the house that we ended up buying that he was talking about, it was actually a middle, because it's a townhome community. So it was the middle one that was on the market. And then Brandt was like, I think we should go see this. And it went under. And he's like, oh my gosh, like, it's gone. Like, we can't do it. And then maybe, was it days or a week later, the corner unit popped back up. And he's like, okay, this is it. So, like, go see it. What was it, Paul? And I was like, we're FaceTime. I'm like, house is great. I was like, yeah, it's nice. I'm looking at the room like, I mean, Brandt really wants to make this Airbnb thing work. Like, I'm on board, but to say that I was like 100% would be a lie. Like, I was very skeptical. And then when you see this room, I'm like, there's just no shot. Like, I mean, yeah, you can section it off and you can make it something, but I'm like, we just can't turn this into any, like, this is...
No one's going to rent this.
No one's going to rent this. I was like, this is crazy. But, like, I see the idea, like, the Murphy bed, but I'm like, oh, okay, like, why not? So when we put the offer in, like, everything was great. It worked. And then we're, like, setting up the room. And it was kind of like, okay, this is, like, coming together. And then I think we actually listed it. And we were probably like 95% ready, but we were also kind of like, oh, there's no way we're going to get a booking that first week. And within hours, it's like, someone's coming today, and we're like scrambling. I remember, like, I was on a call, the guy's trying to find the place because he, like, brought him to, and I'm like, Brandt, like, I can't deal with this right now. Like, I'm literally in session. Like, I need you to deal. And he's like, we're just like panic mode on that. But then he ended up staying the whole week, and he was our first guest. He had a dog.
Super nice dude.
Yeah, super great. I don't remember his reasoning for coming, just coming through. And that's kind of how it started. And then it was kind of like, wow, like, okay, I can see the vision. I can see this, like...
How good was that feeling of just like, holy crap, like, this is actually working. It's coming together.
It was amazing, honestly.
Yeah, because I was like, dang, like, I hope this works. I had saved up money for like 3 or 4 years for this home. And I was like, well, screw it. Like, we're just going to go for it. And we, like, when we set up the page, we didn't know when it would go live. We're like, okay, well, I think if we just put it, like, right now, then it'll probably start tomorrow. Nope.
Wrong.
It was
Right
live
now.
right then and there. And we've also found out that the first 3 bookings get, like, 20% off?
You
Or
get a promo.
yeah. And so the guy booked for like 3 or 4 days. And
like
and we were
that.
like, crap, like, oh, well, I think all of it's ready, We're just like literally
Like, I
just
don't
jumping
think
in the deep end here.
The curtains weren't up yet. Like, we're still trying to, like, put stuff... We're like, oh my God.
Probably
we
had like
didn't
an
think-
hour before he was
Yeah.
his designated check-in time. But yeah, I think going back to your
I
point,
bet that
like,
was probably the most productive hour ever.
yeah, that was like, we got to get this done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, if it falls down, it falls down.
It's what it is.
And
At
just
this
be like,
point.
oh, like, sorry, like, we had somebody put that up.
Our handyman, well, not good.
Yeah, we're getting rid of him.
Yeah, you have to throw him out.
But I think as time went on, Rebecca like bought into it a little bit more, and the time came again where I was like, hey, like, what if we got another one? I was like, would you want to do this like full time? Because I feel like I want to, I can only play soccer for so long, right? Like I want to do something after soccer, and I want to have something already kind of set up that I can transition into. Hopefully, I play soccer for another 8 more years. But you just never know, and you want to use like the time you have now as well as you can, setting yourself up for a proactive future. So we kind of just like screw it, like let's just trying to find another one.
Yeah.
I mean, timing wise, it ended up working out perfect because like that year with counseling was not going great. Like just a lot of stuff going on there. So in between my sessions, I would go down, clean the room like quickly, like get it turned over for the next guest. And then I started to like slowly get to the decision where I was like, okay, like this is too much. Like I'm going to leave this practice, but then I'll like come New Year, because I left in December. I was like, come New Year, I'll find a new practice or a new company, something like that. And then I ended up actually tearing my ACL, which was obviously not part of the plan at all.
Playing soccer.
Doing
Weren't
what?
you playing pickup soccer?
Playing
Pickup?
just soccer. I finally, so we've been back for a year. A lot of my old college teammates were still in the area, and they're like, hey, we need more people for, our indoor league. Like, you should play. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. Like, let's get back into it. Probably shouldn't have done indoor with turf, but I think it was the third game in. Brandt was in preseason. I tear my ACL, and I like text him. I was like, hey, I just tore my ACL. And he's like, how do you, I'm like, it's for sure torn. Like, this is it. So he texts his trainer. They like set me up appointment the next day. The doctor's like, yeah, 99% you tore it. You got to get an MRI. Within 2 weeks from tearing it, I was in surgery and then the recovering. And we actually at that time, I think it was January, because it was kind of like, okay, I left counseling. We're like, hey, let's see like where I want to go next on that. And then January came, and our neighbor was starting to move out of his townhome. And he's like, hey, I want to Airbnb my townhome. Would y'all want to take over and kind of do the management and everything like that? And I was like, well, I just quit. So like, I have the time. Like, this is great. So January, I spent literally ordering everything, setting up his whole house, because he left some stuff, but pretty much like everything I like ordered, put it together, like got it, like made everything, did the page, did all of it. And then we were ready to go. I think it was mid-February is when we were launching. And then I tore my ACL pretty much like mid-February. And I'm like, well, this is not good, because like I was going to be the one cleaning the 3-story townhome. I'm like,
wow.
Okay, so for the first, was it like about the first month, Brandt had a lot of stress on his plate with that,
Just add it
because
on there.
he just came back from preseason.
Yeah, right.
I just tore my ACL. I can barely move. He's still doing his training. It's the start of the season, all the, like the nerves, everything from that. And after practice, he's coming. He's trying to do a little bit of the cozy. I could kind of help on it, but then he's running over to the other townhome, cleaning that whole townhome. It was crazy.
How long did you guys manage that for? That other one?
Only 6 months, because then he ended up
He
selling.
just sold it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did he just not see the return on it? What was his reasoning that he sold it?
He was getting another house that I think he needed the capital for,
Gotcha.
because it was a new build.
Yeah.
So he was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sell this. Like I'd rather just have the money and put it into this house.
Yeah.
And it was still like a good time to sell,
Yeah.
I feel like.
It's 2022. Like I think it was around July or August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember him making out pretty well on that. Would you guys do a co-hosting thing like that again? Like, well, how was the experience?
We learned a lot.
We
for
learned
sure.
a lot.
Yeah.
I think we'd probably write like a definite contract, because this was just like a shake of the hand kind of deal.
Yeah.
But we'd write like a definite contract and be like, hey, this is, if we're going to do this, like this is how we want it to operate. This is what you're responsible for. This is what we're responsible for. And this is the percentage that we'll take.
Right.
Yeah, because there's a lot to figure out.
Yeah.
Like who gets paid, who does this, who does that. When things break, who's ordering it, who's putting it together.
Yes.
And
There's
you
a
would
lot.
know better than any of us.
Yeah,
We just
it's-
kind of went in blindly to that, and we were just like,
Right. And-
it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know at the beginning. You
Right.
know? Now I've pretty much seen every scenario, probably like
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys. I say that, and then something new comes up.
Always. Always.
But yeah, there's so much to think through, where it's like you don't know until you go through it. And you're like, oh crap. Okay, we need to add that to the contract. That to the contract. Like, all right, I didn't like doing that. Like, owner investor's going to do that one next time.
Yeah.
So you guys managed that for 6-ish months. They sold it. What was life like at that point? So you're in FC playing. You're doing this Airbnb thing full time at that point.
At that point, yeah.
And then what's like the next steps? Buy the lake property?
Yeah, so we were just essentially looking for another property. We got 5 champagne bottles out, and we wrote okay, lake house, Charlotte house, second Charlotte house, mountain home, and then beach home.
Nice.
In no particular order. We were just like, okay, this is our
goal.
goal in the next 5 years. This is what we want to do.
How'd you guys come up with those specific types of properties? Like, what about those? Because obviously you had some thought into the mountain, the beach, the other shoulder property.
So
I feel like the Carolinas.
the biggest thing for us was investing in the Carolinas, for one, and then 2, places that we would want to go and visit as well, that we don't need full-time renters or long-term renters there.
Yeah.
And we kind of we had some experience in the Airbnb industry already, and we wanted to continue to do that. So it was just a combo of those things of attractive places to go, for people to visit, one, and then for us to go as well when we do have time off, that could stay in our families, for generations.
Yeah. Because chances are, if you like going there, then other people will like going there.
Right. And it's places that we've been to and visited, and we're like, dang, this place is dope. I think I would want to buy a home here, eventually if the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, when you get to understand the area more, you understand the experience of it. I know we'll get into that about Airbnb experiences, but also having that destination place and understanding here's what you can do around here. Here's some other things within the house or whatever that would be beneficial for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So you picked out, all right, we want to get these houses. And how did we get here with the duplex?
That one was it just fell into our laps, I feel like, on that one.
That was kind of crazy because we were just I think Rebecca was just shooting the shit, looking at homes on Zillow.
And around the lake, because we were looking more for in Charlotte still.
Yeah, we were still looking for another Charlotte house because we were okay, this place has been great. We want to kind of expand here. But then Rebecca just saw this home pop up on the lake. And I think you remember taking us up there to it. I think, what was it, on Mayview Road or something, up in Mooresville. And we were like, yo, this place is pretty sweet. And we just hit up Paul. We're like, hey, Paul, can you put an offer in on this place for us? And I think somebody outbid us by $10,000. And we're like, oh, dang. But then you called and you were like, or the agent let you know, the owner has some other properties. And
it's a duplex.
One was
it's closer to the lake. Wait, what?
Tell me
It's
more.
off market. I was
And
we don't have to
off
compete with
market.
anybody.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I think we were like, it sounds too good to be true. I was a little skeptical. We rolled up to the duplex, and I was like, dang, it looks kind of shitty, but I was like, you know what? I think we
definitely
can.
needed some work.
I think we can do
needed
this. This would be a big project for us, but I was like, it's too good of an opportunity to pass up, I felt like. So we were like, okay, just ask what he wants. I wanted to go lower, of course, but Paul was like, I don't think he's going to do it, man. I was like, okay, fine, just give him asking then.
Had to bend your arm on that one.
Yeah. So we got the duplex in May, or closed on it in May, and spent.
No,
This is
closed on in June.
2023 or
Closed on it in
2022?
June. This is 2023.
23.
So didn't find anything the rest of 22 after July when
Yep.
our neighbor sold. Found this house in April. Oh, put an offer in and got it accepted in May. Closed in June.
Yeah.
And then spent the next 4 months renovating both units. It's a top bottom duplex.
Yeah.
And both of them just needed to be.
I'm assuming you hired it out, or did you put your handyman hat on to do some of the work?
We were 50-50.
Yeah, I would say 50.
Okay.
We did half of it ourselves, and then, there needed to be updated electrical, which I'm not touching that.
Yep.
Plumbing. Yeah.
But
And then most of the outdoor stuff of building the deck and the putting green.
the little stock tank pool, the
Yeah.
fire pit.
The trees, you guys cut down
The
all
We
the
had to cut
trees,
down
yeah,
9
that we had
trees. Yeah,
11.
but
A lot.
I thought it was 8 or 9 pines. Or no. Yeah.
Oh, I thought
it was
okay.
9 pines
I thought it was
and
8 pines and then the massive tree. Either way, we cut down a lot of
Yeah.
trees.
So
And you still have a lot of trees on there too. Still.
And there's
Yes.
still like 7 or 8 pines, but towards the end of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you were gearing up to manage this for you, right? Full
Yes,
time.
this
So-
is full time on that. So I would, when he would leave to go to practice in the morning, I would pretty much leave to go to the duplex, and then I would be there until either he got home or I would stay later, or it was kind of like he would actually not kind of you would come after practice, and then he would meet me up there, and then we would stay until like anywhere from 6 to 8 p.m. just still working on it, and it was just nonstop. And this one was a little interesting because we actually had renters. So the bottom one on our offer was contingent that he moves out at the end of the month, as long as like our offer is accepted. And so we had no issues with that. So it was kind of good on that end. So we were able to use pretty much all of July to renovate the bottom section.
Yep.
And then we could do some of the outside stuff with the 2 renters. And then the top lady, she actually wanted to stay until her rent was up in, I think, the following February.
Yeah.
I think once Paul was like, they're going to Airbnb it, so you're going to have a lot of people coming in and out. And I think that kind of changed her mind of like, I'm going to get out, which worked out amazing. So she left August, and we were able to use all of August to renovate her section. And then September was kind of just doing that,
It was just like finishing everything up, like touch ups, stuff that we might not have thought of, and we're like, oh wait, it needs this or it still needs this.
yeah. And then we went
Went
live.
live mid-October, beginning to mid-October of 2023. And Rebecca's just been doing all that full time.
How was that the first few months? Because you went into it where lake season's dying down, right? But you're
Yeah.
right on the lake.
Yes.
It was pretty slow, I would say.
From
I'm thinking,
to see
like-
what we're doing this year compared, like
Yeah.
we thought we were doing well last year. We're like, oh wow, like we're getting bookings, like
Mm-hmm.
this is great, like okay, like this is not bad. But to see how it is from last year to this year, to actually go through that full year, I would say what we thought was busy last year was not busy.
Yeah, a lot busier this year.
Mike, you can say no. Would you want to share some like revenue numbers? Like just kind of high level?
$1 million.
Yeah,
I
we
wish.
actually-
I think last year between 2 units, I think it was like 3,000 or 3,500.
yeah.
And the mortgage is 1,800. So it's like, okay, you're still making a little bit of money
You're saying per month.
per month.
Per month,
Yeah. But I think this year for November at the duplex, we're on track to do about 5,500.
Nice.
So you're almost doubling.
Yeah,
the
so
revenue
we're
from
like
last
almost
year.
doubling last year, but again, the listing was on longer for people to book.
Yeah.
And then we also had a lot more promos to try to get bookings quicker. That kind of cut into our cash flow. But yeah, this year's been a lot more solid.
What's your occupancy rate usually on that property? Like
So it's
combined?
interesting because
Of how we have it listed.
yeah, I actually texted Caleb about this.
Yeah.
We had a unique booking where we usually only allow like 28-day bookings, but I was like, some guy inquired about like 2.5 months.
It was 81 nights.
Yeah, and I was like, hey Caleb, like, is this like normal? Like, what do you think about this? Have you had this done before? And Caleb was like, I mean, yeah, like this, like the short-term rental contract in North Carolina should cover you up to like 90 nights. And he's like, if I were you, like, I would take it. And I was like, I called Rebecca. I was like, I mean, dude, Caleb said he would take it. So I'm thinking he knows more than we do. Like, I think we just like say, hey, look, this is what's going to happen. This is when you can book it until, and that's going to be that. And they were like super receptive. They're like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Your place looks awesome.
So they book both units.
No, just the
Just
top.
Just the top.
Yeah, so we still get like
It's just
the
2 guests up there too.
like the shorter bookings.
Yeah.
And this was during slow season.
Yeah, so
So it worked out.
started October 30th, and they're staying until like mid-January.
January. Yeah.
So it was actually pretty clutch for us, and we're kind of trying to transition like all that cleaning to professional cleaners now.
Yep.
As we focus on a new Charlotte home that we want to move into, and kind of do the same thing where we live in it and Airbnb, hopefully a separate unit.
Yeah.
One
working
way,
on it.
one way or another.
We will get it.
Yeah.
We will get it.
Because that one worked out perfect too, because we also wanted to do renovations come January. And so when he said, I think it was like till January 19th that he won it, and we're like, okay, we're gonna do renovations, but we're like, you know what, we'll go from there, and then we'll just do the renovations from January to February. But I'm also due in February, so it's kind of like, you know, this would be a good timing. Like, let's just get the long booking out of the way, and then we can kind of see where we want to go. But then I don't want to say I have control issues with the cleaning, but since I've been doing the cleaning, obviously for the cozy for over 3 years now, and then for the duplex over a year, I'm very particular on the cleaning. We've never, oh my gosh, I don't even want to say because it's gonna happen, but we've never been hit on cleaning at the duplex. So we have a 5-star for cleaning, and I really take pride on that. And so now the fact that we're gonna try to do December and like test it out with the new cleaning company
For the bottom unit.
for the bottom. So I was like, this is good because we can see how the bottom unit goes. If we don't like it, you know, we can figure something out come January, but it's not like we're giving them the full duplex and then we get hit on both sides.
Yeah.
So it's kind of timing wise. It's like, oh, okay, like let's try this. And it's different. We get to kind of see how it is with, even though it's still short term, it's kind of like longer for us. And seeing how they've been, and thankfully they've been super, super great guests.
Yeah.
Good.
And they've been good with the people coming in and out, and they're quiet and they're respectful. So, and they're looking to buy a house, so they have an end date too.
Yeah.
So we know that.
So that's why they're in town.
Yeah.
Because they're looking to buy. So they've actually like are coming from a different area.
I think they're coming
Come
from
from
California.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Just
they
picked
made
up,
like,
sold, and
They're probably
moved
like,
over.
man, how's there so cheap here?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I get that a lot when
exactly.
people come from
Yeah.
California. They're like, well, I can get this 2,000 square foot house for $800,000. Like, yeah.
This is
you
amazing.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, yes, you could.
Perspective.
And we
Yeah.
still have money left over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
So do you guys, I'm always interested because we've talked about this with some other properties, me and Caleb, when you have 2 units in a property, do you guys have it listed where each are separate and then do you have it where someone can rent the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you find like better occupancy rate with that? Like, have you seen some differences? Like, I guess.
So in the summer,
Interesting
the
on that,
full
yeah.
unit gets rented more. Because I guess more families are looking to go on vacations, and if you're going on a vacation with another family, then you get 2 separate spaces with 2 separate kitchens with all these amenities on the property. So like the kids can go outside and play or do whatever, and the parents can just kind of chill and drink and go to the water or something. But in the slower seasons, I don't know if maybe once for Thanksgiving, maybe last year, to have the full duplex booked out. It's mainly just they're getting booked separately. The top unit will get
Separate, yeah.
booked for 4 guests, and the bottom unit will get booked for 4 guests.
It's interesting because like for this summer, the full duplex was booked pretty much the whole summer. It was always the full duplex, and it actually, if you looked at our like occupancy rate for the top unit, it said 0% because we never had anyone book the top
Just that
unit because
unit.
it was always just like the full one. And so I think we had our last full booking maybe September or August, and then since then, when it's slower season, it's usually top bottom is booked out individually.
Yeah, I think Labor Day was the last like full duplex booking, and then it went back to, top and bottom.
Does
Yeah.
occupancy rate hurt your, like, on Airbnb? Did they take that into account and not show your listing as much if you have a lower maybe that's not
I don't
an
know.
issue.
Actually,
I'm not
that's
too
a good
sure.
that's a good
Yeah.
question.
Like, obviously it hurts your pocket, but I mean, like, does it push your listing down further? Because I think about, like you said, it's like we're renting out the top unit, but it's saying 0 technically
Because
on
the way it's
Airbnb.
listed,
So are they
yeah.
not pushing that, or do they push it more when they see lower stuff?
I don't really know, but I've seen pretty similar to what you guys were saying with it's kind of trendy. Like one will kind of pick up and take off, and like the listing together will carry all the weight. And then in maybe an off season or a specific month, like you'll get bookings separately on the top or bottom. Like we have one near Optimus Park that performs pretty similar.
Okay, yeah.
We found it to be a little difficult to keep momentum on all 3 listings, the 2 together and then the individual ones. So we kind of split tested it for maybe a year, and we ended up shutting down the 2 individual listings
Oh, wow.
because we had something similar where people just booked the group listing like for months,
Oh, okay.
back to back to back to back. And then it took so long for
Gotcha.
us to like kind of respur the algorithm to promote the 2 individuals. So
That
we
makes
were just
sense,
like,
yeah.
let's just ride this momentum. We still have the listings, but we unlisted them. So we
Right.
just have the entire booked. and tire available. So I think it's more momentum.
Okay.
That from
that
what
makes
I've
sense.
seen, I don't have any other stats. That's the only situation that we have in our portfolio that's similar to what you guys have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes
'Cause
sense.
right now, from doing it now a full year and seeing how it went, it seems like the summer is obviously like the busiest, and that's when you get like your, I would say, louder groups. So having the summer booked fully just for the duplex, like them booking the full duplex, helps us kind of with the
Yeah.
headache of the guests being like, hey, the people upstairs are being loud, the people downstairs are being loud. So it's kind of like, hey, this is your whole party. So if you have any
Yeah.
complaints, it's your group, and that's kind of that. And then thankfully, in the off season when it's, I feel like, cooler and not as many lake activities because the lake's also quiet, our guests are usually pretty calm and quiet too for like individuals. So we don't get a lot of complaints on that end. Like,
Yep.
obviously people will be like, oh, I can hear people walking upstairs, but then we tell them, it's a top bottom duplex. We let them know you booked the bottom, so you will hear people upstairs. But besides that, we don't have any like issues too much with the party side, where if we do have an issue with the party, it's usually when they book the full duplex and it's like, hey, it's all you, so
Yeah.
do whatever
Y'all
you
do your
need then.
thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever have any issues with neighbors and stuff like that? Like reaching out? Because say someone books a whole duplex,
We had one issue, but it actually didn't really have to do with the party.
Yeah. So this was interesting. So all of the neighbors have been great. So they all know about the property. Well, obviously when we did the renovations, I like to say they were very nosy neighbors. Always just like coming up like, what are you
They
doing?
were curious.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Curious neighbors.
Okay, yeah, that makes it nicer.
Yeah.
And just like, always, and it's kind of like, we'll have people like even like, like no one would be like, the unit wasn't booked. We were still renovating, and they will like go up to the window, like on the top floor, and they're like looking in. And I can see them on the camera on the ring. I'm like, hey, excuse me, like, can I help you?
Get
we
off
have-
the property.
Yeah, like with
leave, sir.
their dogs and everything, just like casual. And
I was like, that was actually like, I was appalled.
Yeah.
I would never go on somebody's property and just be like, oh yeah, let me just walk up these stairs and look inside.
It would shock you how much people just.
I mean, I'm
don't
just
care.
like, dude, the audacity to do that. I'm like, because we have like 5 cameras on the property. It's like 2 Ring doorbells and then 3 like outdoor blinks covering the driveway, the backyard, and
the
then
side driveway.
the side driveway. And we're just like, I'm talking through a camera. I'm like, hey, you need to get off. Like, you're trespassing on the property right now.
but their response is, no, it's a rental, so it's fine.
That's
I'm
what
like,
they would say to you?
Yeah.
I'm like, we're the owners.
Yeah.
Get
Like-
off the property.
That has nothing to do
I
with
was
it.
like,
Yeah.
dude, is she like, what?
And then it's the funny thing is because some of the signs too, it's like you see no trespassing signs everywhere out there. And I think one of the neighbors even has like, protected by the Second Amendment if you step on my property, and it's his wife like literally coming. I'm like, this doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
people
like,
don't follow
get-
their own
No,
rules.
that's
That's the
not-
problem.
And then we
Yeah.
had one lady who was like taking pictures and same thing, and she's like, no, I'm just looking. I'm like, okay, well look from the street. Like, you don't need to be here. Because we have had guests. Thankfully, we haven't had any issues with this, but we've had guests where they don't have cars, and so they'll take Ubers everywhere they go. So it doesn't look like anyone's in the driveway, but they're in the unit. And so if you have someone just coming up to
Yeah,
your window.
yeah.
It's like, what is
That'd be
this?
really weird.
Or
Yeah.
parents will go out and they leave like their teenage kids at the house, and it's like, we do not need that message of, hey, so like some person was just staring in your window. I'm like, just our curious neighbors. But so overall, all the neighbors know it's a rental property. They kind of know how the neighborhood is with a lot of the lake properties right there too, that there's, there's gonna be short-term and long-term renters. So neighbor-wise, we haven't had any issues with
Everybody's, they've been good.
everyone's been great. Every time I see them out there, they're always like, man, like, we saw y'all had more guests this weekend. Like, y'all are booked. Like, this is great. So everything's been good. Recently, was that August? August or September.
Yeah, I think it was September.
So this can kind of go into one of those, I guess, like, guest stories because
Yeah.
we have a...
Tell us it all.
Give
we
them
have
what they want.
a neighbor right next, so we're the corner lot, and then like the house right next to us. We've never had any complaints about him. All of the Airbnbs, if anything, are always like, hey, we just want to say like your neighbor to your right, I guess technically kind of right, is great. Like, he was out cutting the grass and we were sitting out on your deck, and he just was so mindful and just, hey, like, I just want to let you know, like, we're cutting the grass, so like if you need us to move or if you want us to wait till you go in, like, everything has always been respectful with
super
this
nice
guy.
guy.
Super nice guy. Like, we've been in communication since we bought the property. So we get a family. They book the top unit. Just, you know, I don't know, like standard. I
Standard,
think,
like 4-day booking, like
Yeah.
Thursday to Sunday or something like that.
yeah, they have 2 kids. They're ecstatic about all the outside amenities, everything like that. They want to build a fire. And so, you know, the cameras are going off so we can see, obviously, like,
Do you have a
They're-
fire pit up there?
Yeah.
We have
Okay,
a
so
fire
you have a
pit.
designated area.
Designated area for a fire pit.
Yeah.
Is it shared between top and bottom?
Yeah,
Shared
all the
between-
amenities
Okay.
are
Yeah,
shared.
yep.
Yeah.
and this is like down in the front of the property, kind of like on the, like front side of it. And they like, I didn't know any of this until we got the message. So then I went back to the cameras because I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, let's go check the outside cameras. And I get a message from the guest just being like, I'm very upset with your neighbor. Like, the way he handled himself, like he put our fire out, he just came up with his hose. And, you know, I just feel very uncomfortable now. Like, I don't want to, like, just this whole thing. And she's like, I think she even like came back and was like, you know, he came at me, so I came back at him. Like, and then his girlfriend came. I'm like,
I was like, that does
What?
not sound like our neighbor.
Yeah.
But
it was just like intense, like just
What
very.
time did you get this
aggre-
message at? Like, what time of day was
This
this?
was probably 8 p.m.
So it's 8 at night.
8
You're getting
at
this
night.
message going.
And it's
what-
a Sunday.
What is going on?
Sunday, yeah. I'm
I
like,
think a
dude,
Sunday-
what
Saturday
are you
or
doing?
Sunday.
Yeah.
The Lord's Day. Everybody relax.
Hey, rest in prayer, yeah.
Yeah. And it was, and I think up to then there was no really messages before. Like everything's been fine. So we're kind of getting this like, I'm super angry. I'm upset with your, like, just this whole, I'm like, okay, what? So then I'm like, before I respond, let me go to the cameras. And you're looking at the cameras. Well, then I'm like, well, it's right there. They build the fire, this massive fire, like just going. And then so they had one car it was 3 adults and 2 kids. 2 of the adults leave. And then she goes inside with the kids
While the fire's going.
while
While
the
the
fire's
fire's
going.
And,
And-
this fire like borders the neighbor's property.
It's like
Don't you have a
12
fence
feet.
right there too? Or am I thinking of a different side?
No,
On the-
this is a little bit further down from the
Okay.
fence.
Yeah.
But
Because we didn't want to put a fence there because of the fire. But it's 12 to 15 feet off his property because I think standard for North Carolina had to be 10 feet off their property if you're putting a fireplace or fire pit. So we had, you know, protocol was everything. We have a whole list of rules of fire etiquette and just, you know,
don't leave the
Which
fire
people don't
unattended.
Don't
Yeah.
read.
Especially a huge bonfire that you've started.
People hate to read. There's one thing
Well, a lot
I've
of people
learned
can't
about
read, I found.
Airbnb.
yes.
People hate to read.
And then complain about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but it's right there. So, and then there are 2 bottom guests. There was a couple staying downstairs, but they were gone too. So when he comes outside, there's no cars in the driveway.
The neighbor. When the neighbor comes
Oh yeah,
outside.
when the neighbor
Yeah,
comes,
yeah.
so that he sees no cars in the driveway. They're in the house, but the curtains are closed, so he can't see anyone on the property. And
He just sees a
this,
giant fire
with
on the
nobody
corner of
attending
our
it.
property that's close to his property, and
next to
nobody's
his
out
girlfriend's
there.
car. So he and the girlfriend's like, put it out. And he's like, I don't know, like I don't really want to touch their fire. And so then finally he's like, okay, I do it. So he takes his hose and he's just like, because it doesn't reach, and he's putting the fire out. And so I can see that on the camera. He's putting the fire out, and then the girl comes out and just starts cursing him out. Like, what the F are you doing? Why the F would you do that? Like, he's like, I mean, you have an unattended fire. He's like, I didn't see any cars. I didn't see anyone outside. Like, my house is right here, my girlfriend's car. He's like, do you see the issue? And she's like, you know what? Just get the F back inside. Like, I don't even care. I'm like, wait, how is that your response? Like, you were obviously in the wrong. Like, you shouldn't have a fire unattended. Like, even if it was for 2 seconds, like, leave someone down there. Just be like, hang out. I'm going to grab, like, or just wait. And so I think it was like, that's when she messaged me. But then, of course, you can't ever tell the guests, you know,
They're wrong.
necessarily
Yeah.
they're wrong and that, hey, he was in the right. So I have to like make this like whole message of like, I'm very sorry this happened, like, you know, everything like this. I'll talk to the neighbor. I'll kind of see what's going on, everything. So then the other 2 ladies come back and they're same thing. They're just like, I can't believe he would do that. They came back 20 minutes later. And she's like, at the end of the night, she then finally, I think, messaged and was like, you know, I understand. Like, thank you for being so understanding and all this stuff. Like, I do understand. I did go inside. Like, I did leave the fire into. So eventually, once she calmed down, like,
Yeah.
but the neighbor texted me and was like, hey, so we had an issue. Like, I would love to talk to you about it. I was like, Oh, here it
Oh,
goes.
I know.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'm aware.
Which it ended up being fine because I told him, I was like, we've never had an issue with you. I was like, it was very like out of the norm to get a message about a guest complaining about you and your girlfriend. And he's like, yeah, well, my girlfriend obviously like just hears her boyfriend getting like yelled at. So she came out to defend me. I was like, I don't blame her. And so that was just that was like our biggest issue with the neighbor. So now we got more signage of saying, I was like, how
More
much
stuff to read.
Yeah, more stuff to read. More. I'm
They're
We're
like,
not
gonna
gonna
read.
read.
We're not gonna read.
Yeah.
They'd have
Yeah.
instructional videos. Be like, before
I know, I'm like-
before the door will unlock, you have to watch these 4 videos.
What if we just made like 4 TikToks where we're like dancing and explaining the rules? Like I guarantee you they would watch
then
it.
Oh,
it-
people
they
would love that.
Yeah, everyone would understand it.
That's actually a really great idea. That's a,
I
It is.
stayed in a place it was near Asheville, but they had QR codes everywhere, and it redirected to their TikTok of them like
That's
they had like
amazing.
a whole coffee bar, and I'm like, I don't know how to
okay.
use half of this, but I want to.
Yeah.
But there was videos, and I'm like, this is
That is a
sick.
great
yeah,
idea.
that's a really cool
Yeah.
idea.
People will watch things, but
Yeah.
they will not read things.
Yep.
Because we'll have like the microwave, just how to use the microwave. I have word for word instructions.
How do you
How to
The
use
microwave.
How to use a microwave.
We
Yeah.
have that for the
That's
microwave.
scary.
To
Did you-
turn
do
the
you have
light
that
on,
because
the
someone
fan.
You're
reached out to you?
surprised? I'm not surprised.
Well, you
at
do
all.
this already, but like, okay, so I gotta ask, but did you guys preemptively do that, or you were like, someone asked you like how to use a microwave, you're like, you use it as a microwave?
The only reason we have things there, is, like that's like, dude, why would you have that? Is because we ran into an issue that we're like, okay, well, I guess we have to put instructions on how to use a microwave. I'm like,
We'll have like
Guys.
the AC
Come on,
remote.
plus
Come on,
30,
man.
plus
Yeah.
30.
yeah,
Open door.
exactly.
It
Are there
is-
any other buttons?
We have like the AC remote.
I've heard that. That's the guy way we use 30 seconds. I do it all the time.
It's so true. But like if this was the instructions for like the AC remote sits here, and then literally the instructions are right behind it. We had one guest say like, "Hey, we can't figure out the AC, like all this stuff," and so I then just wrote it out like word for word exactly what he needs to do, because I'm like, send me a picture of what the screen is saying, and I'm like, okay, well you don't have it on, all this stuff. So when I told him, he's like, oh, well that makes sense. He's like, it's working now. I just didn't think the instructions on the wall were the same instructions for that remote.
yeah.
I'm like,
we thought you had a different model. I'm like, brother, why would we have instructions for a different model behind the
there.
remote? I'm like, dude, I don't get it. Like, I saw one thing on Twitter one time, and it was like, to turn the light on, please flip the
yes.
switch. And somebody like commented on under it, and was like, why did he put this here? Like, is this really necessary? And then one of like the other Airbnb guys on there, like Taylor Jones,
Yeah.
he was like, the only reason anybody has like anything like this is because a guest did not know how to do it. And I was
Yep.
like, dude, to turn a switch, I'm like, that's crazy.
That's
Yeah.
scary to me. What's the craziest thing you guys had to give instructions? Is it the microwave thing?
Dude, the craziest thing.
Or did you have to
don't
do
do
the
the
light
stock
switch?
tank pool,
Yeah.
dude. The craziest thing. So we have a mini split in the bottom unit.
Yep. And for people that don't know what a mini split, this is your HVAC system. that's
Yeah,
in there.
Yes.
yeah. It's remote controlled. So okay, the one guy didn't read the instructions, thought it was a different model, and I was like, okay, like that's kind of crazy.
at least you knew it went for something inside
But
the
this,
house.
this lady, like blows him out of the water.
Oh.
So the guests check in, and we have a stock tank pool. Granted, it does look like a hot tub, but in our description, and
When
you
you
don't
have
even
the
have to like,
filter on, yeah.
you can like click on the picture too, and under the picture it'll tell you mini stock tank pool.
Does not produce heat.
Does not
It's
produce-
not a
yes.
hot tub.
So
it gets
you actually
dimensions,
talk about what it is.
Yes,
Instead of
and
just like it's a stock
In
tank.
the amenities,
Yeah.
like if you look, it does not say. It says hot tub. Like there's no,
It will be
there's not a hot
scratched
tub
out,
there.
like no hot
Scratched
tub.
out.
In the description, we even say like, take after like a hot day on the lake, come take a dip in the stock tank pool to cool off. I give them measurements of how big the stock tank pool, or I would say how small the stock tank pool is.
The size of the stock tank.
Yeah, the size. It doesn't produce heat. It is there.
But again, requires you to read.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, it's gonna be tough for a lot of people. So this lady was like, "Yeah, you wanna like," because you can see like hear him on the Ring camera sometimes, and it looks into the driveway, but you can't really see the pool. And she's like, "Oh, you want to go like get in the hot tub? Like, I'll go turn it on." And I was like, "Turn it on?" I'm like, "How are you gonna
How are you turning
turn
this on?
like the pool on?" Like, I'm like, is she gonna go over to the electrical outlet and like press the buttons, like
Because that's our
reset?
filter, like so it can filter. It looks like a pool.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
So
I'm
you
like-
have to go and clean it all.
so that's where my head went. I'm like, okay, like I guess we'll just see like what she does.
Then it gives little bubbles. So I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so she comes out again, and the guy's like, oh, like I'm ready to get into the hot tub. And she's like, oh, I know you're ready. And she comes out with the mini split remote. I swear to God, I swear to you. She
And
comes out with the remote for the mini split and is pointing it at the stock tank pool.
And just clicking away.
Just clicking like plus. Yeah.
This is over the summer too.
And
This
I'm
is like maybe
dude,
a
she's gonna put like
July
well
or-
It's gonna be
luckily
95 degrees.
you gotta point the thing at the mini split for it to go up. So
Okay.
right now it's just like
It's just she's just pressing
doing
buttons,
whatever. Yeah, but she's just like pressing the buttons, and she's like, "Is it getting warm yet?" And I was like, "Holy cow!" I look at Rebecca. I'm like, "Yo, should
So you guys
we?"
are watching this real time
yeah,
happen.
yeah, like live on the Ring camera, and we're like, "Should we message her?" Like, I don't want her to like think we're like
that is-
watching, but I'm like,
yeah.
"This is actually crazy." Mm-hmm. Like maybe we should just be like, "Hey, just a reminder, the remote for the mini split inside is not for the stock tank pool. That's not a hot tub."
Because she
So-
did end up messaging about something. I forgot what it was. She did message. I don't know if it was about outdoor lights or maybe it was about this, but I did tell her. I was like, also just want to let you know, like, that remote is for, and then she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the information. That's so helpful. But then she continued to still try it, and then they came back a couple hours later, and he like put his hand in, and he's like, I think it's broken, like it's not working. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I really want it. I'm like, what?
I was
Okay.
like, you like, I've seen it all. And the
you
next
see
guest
that and
comes,
you
and you're like,
think-
okay, well, never mind.
I haven't seen it
I'm
all.
actually, I'm
all.
just getting introduced to all this. So
Yeah.
I think that was like one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
We've had
So
that.
did you label the remote not for hot tub, not for pool?
We actually did because we have the instructions of the AC literally right behind it that says like AC/heater mini split remote. So I'm kind of like, it's
Yeah, I think
It
we're
was-
just hoping like that was a one-off.
that
Yeah.
was yeah.
You know,
We get
I-
a lot of people that
If it happens again, then I'm gonna have to be like, not for the stock tank pool. That's not a hot tub.
Yeah.
and I'm like
This
the
does
remote
not
would be
produce heat.
exactly like the remote would be outside, probably somewhere close to the pool if it was for that. It's not going to be in the house. And then we had a lot of people like our door lock. It's a super easy door lock. You just type the code and you hit the bottom button, automatically opens up. Well, no one wants to hit the bottom button. Like everyone just types the code in. And I mean, I think when you book, you get the instructions. The day before, you get the instructions on how to do it. The day of, you get instructions. So
And the instructions are on the door above the lock.
then we put it on the door because people weren't. So then I put the exact model of the door, and then highlight it like what you needed to know. And we did have one lady recently. She like comes in and she's like, okay, she's like reading it. She's like reading the phone. She's like, so do I do it on the picture? And she was like trying to type the code and on the picture.
On the piece of paper.
And right below is the lock. I'm like, oh my
I haven't seen that. That's
goodness.
news to me.
How
That
old
was a
this
new
lady?
one. She might have been a grandma. Well, I don't know.
I just think like 50s.
Maybe in her 50s.
Or she
Yeah.
should still know.
Because then her grandson, I think, was with her and was like, no, I think you just do it on the lock. I'm like, yes, do it on the lock. Do it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Get in there, grandson.
Yeah.
Help me out.
it's, yeah.
So I got a question, kind of circling back to what you had mentioned earlier about the real estate. So I know we've talked a lot about real estate and kind of how you guys have done this, which is awesome. Working with your significant other, kudos to you. I question for you. It was kind of your idea with the whole real estate Airbnb thing, right? I think you mentioned your buddy had a couple books on Airbnb. Was anything else before that in your life that was like, I want to get into real estate at some point?
Never, honestly. I've never been exposed to real estate. You hear people talk about the asset class and like, oh, how it's a good investment. I knew nothing about it. And I was like in Chicago, just trying to play soccer and like find the cheapest rentals in the area that were still in like a decent area.
Yeah.
Or, room with somebody where that we could like offset the rent a little bit so it wasn't as expensive for us to live there. Not until I lived with Jerry did I get exposed to the real estate. And then had to convince Rebecca and be like, hey, I think this would be like a good idea if we can make it work. But luckily, Rebecca's been awesome to work with, and we've made like a really great team because some people do like they're like, no, we're absolutely not doing that. Like I know couples that they're like, no, like we're not doing that. Like I'm not inconveniencing my life in any way to build our future. Like I want to be comfortable now, and this is all I care about. But luckily, you know, Rebecca, blue collar like me, you know, was just like, you know what? Yeah, screw it. Like let's do it. Like let's try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least we like went for it.
Yeah.
You're building the plane while you're in the air. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I had similar. Same concept with me and my wife. Knew I wanted to get in real estate, but she came from like a purely stocks background. Our family didn't
Okay.
own real estate. My dad actually did, so I like got exposed to that. But yeah, it took years to kind of, I don't want to say convince, but like show them kind of the
Right.
light at the end of the tunnel. Like, okay, there's other benefits to this. So that's pretty cool. You guys are doing it. I did want to mention one thing. Like, I think a lot of athletes, especially at a professional level, like I don't think a lot of people are thinking about like life after, you know? Like I played collegiate baseball and semi-pro overseas, and I didn't really think about life after or life after sports. So how, like, I mean, obviously you guys have really good head on your shoulder, but like, how did that come about with thinking, you know, okay, this professional thing isn't going to last forever. Like I need to start putting pieces in place to, you know, start building up cash flow and like, you know, eliminating some of your, you know, expenses with mortgage and whatnot. Like, where did that come from? Did somebody kind of coach you along the way, or was it just like, oh, this is like something I know I want to do?
So there are like a couple points to this. I guess first, like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, so many athletes just do not think about life after their sport. They're like, oh, like, I'm a pro athlete. Like, I'm good. I'm good now. People are always going to love me. They're always going to value me. Like, I'm sure like a job will be available if I need to get one. But I've spoken to so many people that like once you're not a pro and you lose that title, people do not care about you. Like, and that's just the facts.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't want to be in that position. And I'm like a major planner. And I grew up in a household where my dad, like if he could save, you know, 50 cents on like an air conditioning bill, or like if you left the light on, you know, like the standard like dad things, but he took it to like the extreme. Like we were like
Still to this day.
Still to this day, he acts like this. Like we are not allowed to touch the thermostat in dad's house. Like that's just how it is.
I would never. Like we're going to visit this afternoon. I'm bringing like my own pillows because sometimes
Layers.
sometimes I get a little too cold when it's winter because I'm like, but I will never, like I don't even care if I'm 7 months pregnant. I am not asking him to turn the AC on or turn it off. We open the windows every time we go if I get hot. Like it is.
So my dad is
Yeah.
like an extreme saver,
Yep.
and he taught me how to save and I guess like the value of money in that aspect. But he was more of like a stocks person as well, and he kind of had like a stock advisor to help him do his money. But he was also pretty smart and intelligent. He was a software engineer. But both of my parents like worked extremely hard, and that's kind of like what they instilled in me. And I kind of wanted to take a different route because stocks are fine and like, yeah, great for, at least for my opinion, like for 401k or Roth IRA, like awesome investment tools. But I think for anything else, like I want a tangible asset that I can use, right? Like I don't want to just like, okay, like here's my, you know, Merrill Lynch or Robinhood, and I'll just put like, I'll buy, you know, 2 shares in Tesla or 5 shares in Tesla, and then that's it. Like,
Yeah.
that's not fun.
Now what?
You know, like, which in Tesla, awesome stock. I own a little bit of Tesla, but Rebecca and I use most of our capital to invest in real estate and try to find deals and what we want to do with that. But I've never really had any exposure to it to begin with. I've just been like a major planner, and we've kind of found a niche that we, you know, I guess like in a way for the most
You
part.
guys seem to enjoy it a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
especially when you guys do the Instagram reels and stuff like that.
Yeah, for the
You know, it
most
seems
part, like
you
we
guys
enjoy
really-
it. Obviously, you have some of those stories that it's
You're
like,
gonna have that.
yeah, but
You're
no
gonna-
matter what, in
every
any
industry,
business, in
yeah.
any industry, you're gonna run into crazy stuff. And I just like having like a tangible asset that appreciates in value that I can also collect cash off of as well. And I just feel like for us, and I guess a long-term vision with the career that I'm in, I think this just kind of lines up best for us. Obviously, everybody's different, but we just like real estate the best.
Yeah.
And we kind of just learned a lot about Airbnb and dove right in.
And I think to like piggyback off of that too, because kind of going into obviously Brandt getting me on board with like the real estate and the Airbnb. And it was more of like real estate was fine. Like I never had an issue getting into real estate. My dad actually owns his own mechanic shop down in New Orleans, and they have a lot of commercial property. So I was always kind of exposed to the commercial property and like the bigger rental sides on that. Nothing really with like the like the residential side of it. So I remember like when we were telling my parents that we were kind of getting into this, my parents were like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing! Like the like commercial, you know, residential, anything like that, like real estate's like great." And I think we even had a conversation with your dad. And he's like, "Yeah, but why don't you just put that like 8% into like?" Like no. And so I think like getting into the Airbnb world was definitely different and new to both of us, but then also like like explaining that to people. I think sometimes they don't always understand it, because we'll get a lot of people who are just like, "Oh, but like, what's your real job? Like, what do you actually do though?" And like, "Oh, you don't have a job." And it's like, people just think when we say like, "Oh, we do Airbnb," they're like, "Oh, that's passive income." Like they're just making all this money. It's like, no, like there's so
Not
much work
passive.
that goes, exactly. It's not
all.
passive.
The opposite of passive.
Yeah, there's so much work that goes into it. Again, like we give you a 5-second reel of like the fun side of it, but we don't show like the other side of it too. And so that was a little bit on that. But then to go back with Brandt, being a planner and just like everything is calculated. Like Brandt does not do stuff just out of the blue. Like it is like I've thought about it, I've looked this up, everything. And that goes back to college, that a lot of people that we knew, they were like, you know, if I don't finish my major, it's fine. I'm going pro. Where Brandt, I think it was your senior year, like going into your senior year, he's like, "No, I'm going to finish my degree." You took, was it 5 like accounting classes that summer?
Yeah.
It was, I mean, his summer was
The
packed.
whole year was packed because the draft is in January. So if you're a soccer player, like a collegiate soccer player, you don't get that last semester. So it's either like you got to convert everything online, which wasn't really an option when I was graduating. So I had to pack like my spring semester, my summer semester, and my fall semester and be done before December so I could go to the MLS Combine.
Yeah. On top of everything, because you were still doing the summer league, like the PDL league. So, and with all that, so he like from that was like, "I'm going to get my degree," because he's like, "I know soccer's not an always thing like there." And so I think your senior or that spring semester, you took a psychology class that was online, and that was like the last class
I
you
needed like
to
3 more
technically-
credits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just took like a random. I actually minored in psychology with that.
Really? Yeah.
with that
What's
class.
your major? What's your major in?
Accounting.
Accounting.
Yeah.
Brandt the
Which-
accountant.
But yep.
Just does not sound that
Doesn't really roll off the tongue. Yeah.
And so Brandt, like from the start on that, like that was always kind of like, "I'm going to finish my degree. I'm going to get it. Like this is like, I want to set up like," even though it wasn't real estate back then in college, like it wasn't something we talked about. It was always, there's going to be something. And then a lot of people, I don't think know this either, that was it your first or second year you went and
My
got
first.
your master's as well. So it was kind of like when people like talk to Brandt, they're like, "Wait, like you're a professional athlete and you got your master's? Like, wow, like you kind of like," and I mean, you do, like you like set yourself up to be like, okay, like when soccer ends, what do I do next? Like I want to plan, where a lot of guys,
They don't.
they don't
just
have that
don't
plan.
care. I'm just
Yeah.
like I can joke around a lot and
Yeah.
like, you know, whatever. But like when it comes to like getting down to business, like I take care of like all my stuff and make sure that, you know, everything is at least, you know, as set up as well as it could be if, you know, shit were to hit the fan.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of these guys that are playing, they think that just the money's never going to run out? Like you had mentioned, like they think about the celebrity status or the pro athlete status. Once you're not on a team, no one cares, right? Unless
Yeah.
you were like the best player, and maybe you can
Maybe
carry it
you
through.
can, like,
now you're different because you're like the
piggyback.
mayor of Charlotte. So when you
No, but
stop
I
playing, people are
guarantee when I
still-
stop playing, like nobody's gonna care.
I
Like,
think you'd be surprised.
like a
man.
lot of people, I feel like maybe 10% of people would care, where now it's like, you know, 60.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so it's like a big drop off either way. But I just think they're not taught or / exposed to financial literacy.
Yeah.
Like they don't understand literally
using
what
their
money
big-
is.
yeah.
You know, they're just like, and it stinks now because, you know, you have TikTok and Instagram and like all this, like these songs that are like, "Oh, dude, money, cars, clothes, shoes." Like people are buying like all this. I'm not gonna say dumb stuff because, you know, people like to buy stuff like that, but I'm like, stuff that's not really gonna help them or put them in a better position tomorrow than where they were today.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, like we get a lot of that about our cars. Like everyone's like, "Oh, why haven't you bought Rebecca a really nice car?" Like, and it's like, it works. It still turns on. It gets us from A to B.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not something that's like a need. But then it's always like, oh, but you're a professional athlete. Like, you should just buy this like nice car. And it's like, yeah, like, everyone has their need, like their thing that they want to do and what they want to spend it on. And it's like, ours is the next Airbnb.
Yeah, I'd rather
You have
go
your
like
priorities in the right
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah.
I'm sure too it helps you go unnoticed too when you drive around. Like, because if you bought a Mercedes,
like
or whatever,
everybody's
people are
gonna
gonna
look
look
at you.
and then they're gonna be like, wait, who's that? Who just got
Who
a
is-
new
yeah.
car, right? Yeah, I thought about that, and I think that's something I love about you guys, is just staying grounded with it. And it's funny because we'll pull up the showing, and I thought one time I was like, I was like, huh. I just realized that he still has the same car, and you still have your Jetta, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the same cars we had in college.
Yeah.
Yeah, same car.
So it's like I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
How do you, like, because you're talking to the guys on the team, right? And I'm sure you're talking to the wives and girlfriends and stuff like that. Like, you guys have these conversations, I'm guessing, come up, right? Or is it just like, they're like, nah, whatever, Brandt doesn't know what he's talking about. We're gonna leave the Bronicos over there.
I think
They're crazy.
I think a lot of it is like one, they don't want to take the time to learn about it.
Yeah.
Where it might just be easier to watch a TikTok and throw your money in, like Shiba Inu or some like crypto coin, which hey could be very lucrative if you hit it at the right time and sell it at the right time.
Yeah.
But I just feel like they don't take the time to learn about real estate, or maybe they think, oh, it's like too far out of reach. I'm not really sure what I should be buying. But I think again it just goes back to like financial literacy, and that's actually I got a lot of value out of accounting because it taught me about assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, yeah, I'll talk to him about it, and I'll like I'll joke to him about it as well.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, like I just like one of my teammates, I just got a new dog, and I was like, oh, like congrats on your new liability, man. Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
Like
that's-
joking around, obviously,
yeah.
because there's a lot of like emotional support that dogs can provide and
Yeah.
care or whatnot. But I'm just not at that stage right now where I
Yeah.
get more love and care from buying an Airbnb or a house than buying a dog.
Yeah.
Well, a dog was on the radar, but
Due
But
time.
so we actually, funny story about that. When we did move back to Charlotte and we got the home, Rebecca wanted to get a dog.
all I do is compromise. So I compromised with Airbnb, and now I'm but you can tell.
was
Just had to put that there.
I was like, dang, like I do not want to get a dog. Like those things are like they're expensive. And don't get me wrong, like I love dogs.
Yeah.
I grew up with 4 dogs and 4 cats in the house at one
It's a
time.
lot of animals.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
That's a lot.
And I I love animals. I love dogs. But just not a great investment for us right now. And so Rebecca was like, oh yeah, let's get a dog. Like my parents have 2 doodles. Like that'd be so awesome. Which doodles are like a couple grand.
Mm-hmm.
Like okay,
Easily.
well, a couple grand up front on top of like spending $3,000 to $5,000 a year. Like it's not really adding up in my head right now.
Yeah. The math isn't mathing.
And I was like, you know what, Rebecca, you know what? Rebecca lived with me in Chicago for 6 months my rookie year, and she did Rover because she couldn't get a job. So she would like walk some dogs in the area, and we'd watch them too. I was like, what if you just like signed up for Rover again? Like, wouldn't that be like you could get your dog fixed? We don't have the, I guess, like obligation to like stay home all the time or like find places to put them if we do travel in the off season. I was like, what if you just try that for a couple months? If you don't like it, then we'll like circle back to the dog conversation. And she was like, okay, fine. Like I'll do Rover. And I think you built up like a client base of like 8 to 10
I mean, it was-
clients.
So you've got multiple businesses going on.
It was great, and that one actually was right after I stopped counseling. I was like, okay, let me get back into it. So again, January comes, open up the Rover account, start getting all these bookings, and then again go and tear my ACL. I'm like, well, that wasn't. So now I'm like, how am I going to clean this Airbnb that we just like took on, and I have to walk all these dogs that I just committed to, and I just tore my ACL. I was like, great.
So
So did you become a dog
all of her
walker?
jobs turned to my
Yeah.
jobs on top
for
of
a little
soccer.
bit, yeah.
So I was like grinding from like 7 to 5:30 like every day, just
I'd say-
like nonstop.
I think it was from like February to March, maybe a little into April. You took the grunt work of that second Airbnb we were co-hosting and the dogs.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was fine. It ended up working out. We still watch like
Yep.
5 or 6 dogs that she stopped her Rover account. That's just everything like through the relationships that she's built.
That's nice. Do you pay that extra fee?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get the full amount?
Yeah. So that was our compromise on the whole dog.
Yeah.
I know I kind of went on a tangent there.
No,
but I
no.
thought it was like a good, like
No,
a
that's good
funny
to hear
story.
too, because
Oh,
that's
yeah, no,
like,
it's-
it's another business, and I think that's
Yeah.
people don't think about that too. Is like that's another business, and I don't know if you guys are starting to notice this now that you're doing this. You're in business. You have an Airbnb business. You have a dog walking business. Business is just about figuring out things. It's like, oh, I like this. Let me just do it. And like I had said, the analogy, it's building the plane in the air. So many people
Yeah.
don't get off the ground. Like the people that some of the players you work with. I'm sure you've
Right.
talked to their wives and girlfriends, and it's like, guys, you just gotta do it. Just gotta pull, rip
Yeah.
the cord
just commit
and go.
to it, and
Exactly.
like if it doesn't work, you can always stop.
Exactly.
If it's like not lucrative, it's
Then
like
just
okay,
stop.
like this wasn't worth it. We'll just get a dog,
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think
So
for
now we have a
us,
kid coming.
yeah. So now we have a
So-
kid.
Congrats, by
Thank
the
you.
way.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Baby
That's
Bronico.
awesome.
February, right? You said.
Yep,
February,
February
yeah.
10th. So now everyone's like, oh, like, are you gonna get the dog? I'm like, well, now we have to focus on the baby. I was
Yeah.
like,
So my plan worked.
yeah.
So now that you got the baby coming, and you guys talked about hiring out cleaning, like, have you guys looked at your Airbnb business differently? Because we always talk about working in the business, and then there's working on the business, right? So, like, for you guys, have you looked at that long term? Obviously, you got an idea of properties. We're currently looking for another property
Right.
for you
Right.
guys, right? But have you started to, because Kayla's really big on SOPs and putting the right people in the right places and making it almost foolproof, I would say. It's like, let's identify these
trying to.
things and just create efficiencies. Like, is that something you guys are at in your business now? Is finding those little, I'd say, adjustments or things that you can kind of pass off to other people that you can pay now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like we were saying, like finding cleaners that we trust for the duplex, just so we don't have to go out there and spend 3 hours with travel cleaning Airbnbs on Sundays for the most part, or Rebecca doesn't have to go out midweek. So that's kind of like the biggest thing. I think as far as like hopefully we find that second place in Charlotte, we'll still just manage those by ourselves for the time being.
Yeah.
But down the line, it'll be like we're just gonna move out of all of these places. Have cleaners for all of them. We'll probably still manage them ourselves, just because I feel like we could do that, especially once I'm done playing.
Yep.
But hopefully, by that time, it's like, okay, well, this is like offsetting the mortgage right now, or this part of the home is. But once we do like the whole space, then everything on top of that will just be extra cash flow.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the vision at
Okay.
the moment,
Yeah.
which I'm sure there's going to be like bumps in the roads and. But at the same time, we're not really optimizing our listings just because, like, if I have a couple days off in the summer, we're just like, okay, just block it off. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. We'll block 4 days off. We'll go to Oak Island. Just so, because we still have that control.
Especially for the smaller unit. Like for the duplex,
Yeah.
we can usually put like a promotion of
Yeah.
getting like a 4 to 5 night booking out there just because of the space. But for our cozy one, that one will usually just shut it down, or not shut it down, but I guess block it off.
Yeah. But you're usually like, you're still leaving some money on the table.
Yeah.
So it's like, once we get cleaners for that, obviously the cleaners will cut into the cleaning fee or like the bottom line a little bit more, but I won't be as much as it would be if we fully optimize the bookings.
Yeah.
And we'll also get those maybe, I guess, like 4 to 12 hours a week to ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially with the kid on the way. So
Yeah.
like,
And buying
that's-
back your time, essentially.
yeah, that's like a fair trade-off as we grow our Airbnb business.
Yeah. So you guys have been in it for a while. You're learning stuff. Different things come up all the time. I know you've talked to Caleb a few times, but like, how are you finding? Because it's like a community thing. I always think about that. Like, whatever industry you're in, it always helps to kind of lament with other people that have gone through it. Like, where are you guys connecting with people? Are you guys doing in person like events, or are you guys just like online? You guys have found people to connect with, or obviously call him sometimes and stuff like that. Like, are you guys finding that's been helpful? Are you guys doing any of that stuff?
Yeah, well, for me, Caleb's been like the best.
Yeah.
I remember you were like, yeah, just call Caleb because I had a bunch of questions. I literally wrote it on a booklet, called him on the phone. He was super helpful. And then even with the other, I guess like longer rental we got, like Caleb's been my biggest asset for our business just because he has his own, I guess, Airbnb management business. Like he's seen it all, does it all. He's definitely helped me the most. I think you're like, like a Facebook.
Yeah, I'm in the Facebook. I think you're also in that Facebook, like Airbnb.
Probably.
I always see you like commenting on like people's
He's
responses.
a big Facebook group guy.
I mean,
He's told me
so
to do
helpful.
it. I don't disagree
Yeah,
with you.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
disagree with you. I need to do it.
It's super helpful because you get a lot of people with, it's almost like similar issues, or it's like the long-term bookings, or we got this guest, they want this type of check-in, just kind of like seeing how other people respond to it. And so that Airbnb Facebook, I forgot the actual like name to the Facebook group, but that's been helpful to see how other people handle situations. And then it's kind of like, okay, like at least we're like not too far off on how we do this. And then you see how some people handle situations and you question like, why are you a host type thing? That's a whole nother conversation. So that one, and then I do like find a lot of just like social media like accounts that like kind of talk to through their like situations and stuff like that. And then a lot of it I think is just kind of through experience too.
Yeah.
On some of the like smaller complaints and stuff like that, it's kind of just learn as you go, and then knowing the system too, like how Airbnb works, and those lovely phone calls when you have to call Airbnb support and kind of know like what they want to hear and kind of where they like won't really help you. So then you kind of have to like make it like, okay, how can we like get to this point when you're talking to them, because they can be interesting to work with.
Yeah, I bet. What's like the biggest thing you guys feel like you've learned through the whole process with all this?
Oh gosh.
With any part of it?
I think for me it's like just like not getting too emotional, or like not like you're having more patience.
Yeah.
Like not like freaking out about every little thing, or like this guest, usually I guess in our experience, guests just like get a feeling and then they just respond, or they say something to you about a certain thing, and then it's like, okay, like damage control, like
Yeah.
okay, actually like this is what's happening, or this is what you need. You just need to like do this for it to work. So just like kind of like having patience with all of that, because like when you first start out, you're like, just please be perfect.
Yeah.
Like hopefully there's no issues, but of course there's like a million
Something
issues, and
always,
you're
yeah.
like, oh my god, like dude, we're gonna get a terrible review. Like this is gonna be a terrible experience. So just like I guess like taking things in stride.
Yeah, I would say the emotional part, because I feel like out of the two of us, like I would say I'm definitely like more of the patient person.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like that. Yeah. I feel like on that it's like, okay, we kind of get the message. It's like, okay, let's like work through it. But I am on the other side of like, I think I take things personal. Like when we get the review, like that was really hard to learn to not take every review so personal, because I'm like, oh my god, like I remember one person said something about cleaning at the Cozy. I can't even remember what it was. And I was like, you know what, like that's 100% unacceptable. Like I will have a talk with the cleaner, like no worries.
Rebecca
and
goes to the mirror.
You're better than this.
like just in the mirror, like do better. So I think for me, taking it like not taking things emotional was, or like taking the emotions out is, and I'm still learning on that. I think I've gotten better, because like in the beginning, it's like
for
the
sure.
smallest little thing happened, I'm like charge, and then it got to a point where I'm like, okay, like accidents happening, things happen, like I can't keep charging these people for like every little thing, because then I was also just like stressing myself out, looking at like, okay, they have 72 hours except, okay, 36 more hours, okay, do I get Airbnb involved now? And it's just like,
It's also like, is this worth like $20
yeah.
of the process? It's just like weighing like, okay, is this going to be worth, the 2 hours it's going to take to get the money back for it?
That's because there's like some things where I will be like, absolutely not, like I am fighting this forever, like I am not gonna let this go. And then there's like, I've learned to just kind of like, okay, this is just part of the business, like honestly it'd be good to replace this, upgrade it anyways, let's just like move
just
on.
write it off.
Straight up. Straight up. Well, who pays for it? You just write it off.
That is true. It's just a write-off.
It's just a write-off.
The government people.
Oh, God.
What advice would you guys give for people that are looking to get into it, and maybe in your dynamic with husband and wife, like what would be like one piece of advice that you think would be helpful for people?
I think like up front, just like make sure you triple run the numbers. Like don't just
What do you mean by that?
don't just go. I used like AirDNA and Rabu. I'm sure you use similar platforms.
Yeah.
But like compare the two, because I looked at one property in Wilmington this year
Yeah.
that we were very adamant and serious about buying. probably back in May.
Yeah.
And on AirDNA, I think it had it at like 60K in annual revenue, but in Rabu it had it at like 130.
That's
Where
a
I
big
was,
discrepancy.
yeah, it was like a massive
huge.
discrepancy, or it could have been vice versa. It could have been AirDNA had one,
Yeah,
and then
but it was
Rabu
like a
had the
70
other.
grand difference.
Yeah,
It was a
but off
big-
two like
It was
pricing
drastic.
platforms,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, dang. So I actually reached out
I
to
think-
Caleb.
yeah,
and
I
I
think
was
we
like,
talked
hey,
about
do you
that
know
one.
anybody in Wilmington? Like, what do you think about? Because I even sent Caleb the screenshots, I think, and I was like, this is what I'm getting for this pricing platform, and this is what I'm getting for the other one. And I called like 3 property management companies out there. I think you put me in touch with one as well. And like 2 of them said it wasn't a good investment, and
Yeah.
one of them said it was. And I was like,
It was
all
very
right,
mixed.
well, I was like, we're not doing it then. You know, 2 outweighs
Yeah.
the 3. So, because we were literally about to drive up there after training one day.
Yeah, I think you guys texted me about it. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I may call you.
Yeah, I was
We
like,
may
I
buy
might
a
hit you up
property in
about this
Wilmington.
property.
Yeah.
Like, we're literally about to go. So it's like they can be, they can vary a lot. So I think it's just like looking at comparable Airbnbs around the area, looking at the amenities that are outperforming, I guess other Airbnbs without those amenities. Just things like that, and seeing like, okay, can I afford this? 1, and 2, like, am I committed enough to like put the time in to make it the best
That's the big
Airbnb
one.
in the
And,
area?
and what do you mean by that? Because I think people's definition of commitment's different, and I know yours is very
I'm
high
like, yeah,
level.
this is your kid now.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is like this is not like, oh, I'm just gonna I'm gonna buy this, put some furniture in it, and let somebody else handle the cleaning or whatever. Like you have to treat it like your own kid. Like everything's got to be pristine. You got to put that much care into taking, like, I guess, managing this property.
That's great advice, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't look at it as a business.
No.
Still have some extra cash flow, but
It's-
this is
yeah.
a business, and that's what you need to
It's
treat
like
it
you're gonna be working for the cash flow. Like it's not just gonna magically appear.
Especially nowadays, like it's harder and harder.
Right.
Like the design matters so much, the amenities matter so
Yes.
much. Like you can't just throw something up and make $2,000 a month, like
No.
it was
Because on that,
2020.
yeah, on that street, you could also have 6 more Airbnbs, and
Yep.
it's like, how can you be better than those properties? I feel like that's like my biggest thing, is just kind of like looking at, why are you getting into it? If you think this is just going to be an extra little side hustle and you're going to bring some like cash in, probably maybe not the best way of looking into it. It's just kind of like, are you willing to put the work? Because I feel like we get a lot of people like that too, that just think like, oh, like y'all are just like, it's fun and you can just get a little bit of money here and there and you don't really have to do a lot of it. And I think that's the people that are kind of like outside our group. Like I think most of our friends and family, like,
They've heard the stories.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they know the deal.
Yeah.
and a lot of them are also like, I don't think I would want to deal with people. Like, I don't want the headache. I can't, like, we don't want to stress of that. Like, so that kind of turns them off. And it's true. It's like, but then if you start taking everything, like if you're already kind of tight on the numbers going into the investment, and then you manage everything, or like, I guess, third party it out, and you don't manage anything, then people are like, well, I'm not making any money. I may be breaking even. It's kind of like, yeah, you got to kind of like weigh the cons, like the pros and cons on that, and just kind of look like, why do you want to do this? Like, did you see a TikTok that was like, let me tell you how you can make 100K in 1 month? And it's like,
Or some of those like Airbnb gurus that are like,
yeah,
I make $150,000 a month off these. I'm like, I mean, that's awesome if that's
Yeah.
true, but holy cow.
Well, I think the other thing people need to understand is there's a difference between revenue,
Yes.
gross,
Yeah.
and net.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So to you guys' point is like, yeah, this might be generating $100,000, but you're making $500 total for the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
is
like-
that worth it?
That's probably not great.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just like some of the houses we've seen this year. Some of like the duplexes and triplexes, and we're like, oh, let's get the numbers. And then you send the numbers, like you get them from the.
yeah.
And then we see them, we're like, well, no wonder this is like they want to get rid of it, because 1, they're not
Yeah.
doing anything, and
Yep.
then 2, it's just like,
Or they just like, they bought it in 95
Yeah.
and it's already for like 200K, it's already paid off.
Yep.
And they're just like, well, we can rent it for whatever and still make like $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know?
And we've run into that a number of properties
Yes,
where people
we
are
have.
like, this is our number. We don't care. We own it outright. We're making
yeah.
money.
Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday
Yeah.
or Sunday when we had one gentleman say,
That's-
well,
yeah.
you just need to put 50% down
As
and
long
the
as you
numbers
put
will work.
50,
Right?
yeah.
It's like, it's like,
Okay, well,
I don't know if that really works that way. The best.
50% down on a $1 million property.
Down. It's only
But that
500K.
also kind of goes in my other next question is, or point is, understanding what your goals are, but also understanding your own numbers, right? Because everybody's numbers are a little different. So the way you guys look at properties might be different than the way that Caleb looks at it, because maybe you're looking at like, oh, look at the tax advantages I've got. Look at these write-offs, things like that. And I think those are the things that when people get investing, they don't understand all these benefits. We were just having this conversation yesterday, stuff that you were talking to your wife about with like, hey, that's a write-off.
Yeah.
Or, we're getting this debt buy down. We're not seeing it. We're not realizing it right now until we sell this property. But,
Right.
But then we're also getting the tax benefits too.
Yeah.
So like I know you talked about offsetting her salary and things like that. And these little things that it's like, hey, you might not be cash flowing a ton of money, but you just saved yourself 10 grand on taxes this
Right.
year.
Which,
It's like,
like
We learned
we didn't
that,
even realize
yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
I had gotten connected with a lot of I guess real estate people in the area. One in particular, he's like the student rental pros on Twitter. I don't know if I've seen his account. I think his name's Will Gaston. He has a bunch of student rentals in Columbia, South Carolina.
okay.
But I got in coffee with him multiple times, and he told me about like the real estate professional status that. So Rebecca doing Airbnb full time, us being married, and my W-2 actually gives us like great tax advantages.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know about that before we got into it until I spoke to him. So it's like there are more than just like appreciation and cash flow
Yeah.
that go into buying real estate in general.
Yeah, well, and I think something to mention, we're not going to exactly what you make, but when you make a certain amount, those tax brackets get pretty heavy. And it's
Yeah.
like, how do we offset this to take more home at the end of the
Right.
day? Because, like, people will see those numbers and be like, oh, he's making all this money. It's like, yeah, now take out that percentage of taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's gone.
yeah,
So,
big chunk of it anyway.
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like that's something we've definitely learned like each year into it because we had no idea with that going into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Wrapping up here, obviously, I appreciate everybody's time here. You guys have been rock stars. Excited for the next chapter with the little one,
Yeah.
the investment, adding to the portfolio. Where can the viewers, go to learn more about what you guys got going on?
All right, so we got 4 Instagram profiles. We have
We'll plug them all.
Bronabro 13, just my personal. RB Bronico is her personal.
Yes.
We have the BNRB Stays, which is our Airbnb Instagram.
Portfolio,
And then we have the BB13 collection, which is my brand. BB13 shirts, shorts, pants, hats, everything.
Oh,
Oh,
there it
and
is.
we're plugging it in right there. There we go.
Look at that.
Yeah, amazing support.
Yeah.
We didn't plan that. I promise we did not plan
Yeah.
that. So yeah, just those Instagrams is mainly what we post on.
Sweet.
Yeah, you get a little bit of everything of Airbnb content, humor for Airbnb. You get his brand, some like husband wife, I guess, content on that, and then obviously soccer and life
Our
stuff.
like personal journeys. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, cool. I appreciate you guys joining.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
It was
Yeah,
great.
no, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see how it turns out.
Sweet.
Yes.
Us too. Sweet. Go ahead and stop that thing too.
Twice.
No, just hold it.